Just to recap, the podcast is to help expert witnesses know how attorneys find them. I help the experts with their web design and SEO. And a lot of the questions they had was what keywords are attorneys using? What do they want to see on my website? And that's where the idea for the podcast came from. I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about you, your law firm, what you do, and if anyone listening is an ideal client for you, who would that be?
Yeah. My partner Scott and I started a claims personal injury firm about 2.5 years ago here in Vegas after doing each of us about 10 years of defense work, where we primarily defended car accident cases for insurance companies, if not exclusively did that. Yeah, we started 2.5 years ago. There's three attorneys now, and we are a one-stop shop for law firm. There's absolutely no shade to people who advertise and get cases, and then when cases need to be filed, they hand them off to somebody else. Those are some of our best clients, are firms who stick with that part of the law where they're like, hey, we're going to do our best to settle this case without having to file a lawsuit. But if it needs to happen, we're going to involve somebody who has an expertise in that. And that's us. When cases come to us, they're with us till the very end. We're not going to farm it out to a different firm to file a lawsuit or to litigate unless it's a very specific situation where we just don't feel like we're the best person to represent the client anymore, or we feel like they would be better served by somebody else stepping in and taking their case on or coming into co-counsel with us and help them out. There's no ego attached to it when I say we're a one-stop shop and we'll do it till the end, but that's just the way that we operate our firm. And the ideal client for us is somebody who is injured through no or little fault of their own and is looking for help on that journey and is to be respectful and grateful when applicable to our team. Our team works very hard and we get it. Our clients, they're always going through a tough time. So we get it when they're stressed and different things like that because, look, they're hiring us because they're hurt. And when people have chronic pain or a brain injury and they can't remember things or different things like that, it can be hard, right? And they're frustrated, and we just want them to feel like they can always call us. We'll talk them through everything. We'll handle it, and all they need to do is worry about getting better. And we've been able to get some really good results that way. We definitely have a lot of great relationships with many of the attorneys and firms here in town because we've been practicing a while. We've been on both sides, and yeah, I feel like that we can that more than some people, we have a fairly objective sense of the value of the case or the strengths and weaknesses. But anybody who's tried enough cases has that. If you've never been to trial, and it's harder to get to trial these days, but if you've never been to trial, it's difficult to know what's important when you're taking a deposition. The questions that you're asking, it's difficult to know, does this really matter? Or am I just asking the questions that the senior partner gave me? Why is this important? But yeah, our firm, we're super easygoing as far as our personalities, but work very hard to get the best outcomes we can for clients. And honestly, we have a ton of fun. Like we enjoy working together, and I think that helps us drive great results.
Well, thank you so much for being here. So, one of the questions I had is lead magnets are very useful for capturing people's informations from the website side of things, or on the consumer side of things, right? It's been overused to where now they're very annoying unless they're giving you something for free or something like that. And so I'm curious for you as an attorney and as a consumer, let's say you found an expert and you do go through their website, what would be something that you that they would have to offer so that you're like, I'm gonna give this person my email. I want to see their case studies, their CV. What would that be for you?
Oh, okay. On search for experts online, like we either find them through other attorneys who have used them or just locally are introduced to them. I don't go to experts' websites. So I've never been in this situation before, but hypothetically, if I went onto an expert's website, I guess for me, if I'm already searching out that expert and I already want to work with them, It could be honestly something as simple as book a call with me or give me your email and I'll reach out to you. Like, I don't really need an Amazon gift card or, hey, here's my 10 steps to using an expert witness. That's not what I'm looking for. That's not the value that I'm looking for them to add to the case. I'm happy to just set up a time to call or talk to them, and that would be it. They can have my phone number, email, whatever they want.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense. Hypothetically, again, let's say you do find an expert on your through your network, or you found one through a directory. Does it make it more appealing when you see that they also have a website, or it doesn't?
No, it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other if they have a website. If they're a medical expert, I would think if they're a practicing doctor who is a medical expert, if they're retired, then no big deal. If they're a medical expert who's practicing, I would think it'd be weird if their facility doesn't have a website. But I don't think that would really affect necessarily like their efficacy as an expert. I would just think they're maybe a weird person if they're running a business that they don't have a website for, or that they're just going to be like maybe old and hard to deal with if they're not even going through the trouble of setting up a website for their business. As far as like just an expert, let's talk about some type of an engineering expert having a website. I don't really care. I don't having a website could almost cause more problems than it solves because it's just more fodder for opposing counsel to get on and get all their information or see how they're advertising themselves or see how they're holding themselves out to the public. So, yeah, if it's not part of your business, if it's just an expert website, unless it's very simple, that it's just like a WordPress site that's this is how to get a hold of me. Yeah, I would think it'd almost be like a negative.
Oh, okay. 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 And continuing on something you mentioned is that some experts do only expert witness work on retirement or when they're retired. Others do it while they're still practicing. Do you ever ask them, hey, why are you doing expert witness work rather than doing something else? Like, why are you here?
No, I don't think I've ever asked anybody that question.
Oh, okay. Because I know
Yeah,
sometimes they ask them if they do it full time or how much money they do to see if they're more like
sure.
hired gun. Do you go through that series of questions as well?
Yeah, the jury is going to be curious. They know they're not there out of the goodness of their hearts, but both sides. So that's something that we generally cover in voir dire in jury selection, where we're essentially previewing for them or an opening like, hey, you're going to hear experts from both sides, and it's going to be based on credibility and what makes the most sense. And yeah, we can't act like, okay, the other side, oh, they're paying their expert. That's evil because it's like, we're paying our expert too. That's how it works. You've got to pay people for their time. And so that's really the explanation that we give them to the jury. But yeah, when we put our expert on the stand, the jury's gonna be curious how much they're being paid to be there. And if I don't ask him, guaranteed on cross-exam, opposing counsel is gonna ask him. So let's just get it out of the way.
Oh, okay. Okay. And is it the more money they make, the more suspicious it is?
It just depends on what their practice area is, right? So if you're a brain surgeon or a spine surgeon, if you're a neuro and you're charging, let's call it these days for a full day, 15 grand, 20 grand, half day, 10 grand. The way that I usually hear experts explain it is, look, I have partners in my business and I'm responsible for bringing in a certain amount of income each day. And this is a lot of money, but it represents the amount of income that my clinic is losing out on by me not being at work, essentially, is how it works. Now, if you're a chiropractor or some type of an engineer or you're just a solo type of an expert and that specific explanation wouldn't make sense, you've got to go with more of a look that this is the market rate for this type of expert work. But yeah, as far as if you get paid more, that it's more suspicious. If you're a neurosurgeon, then $15,000 for a day might not be that suspicious to a jury, especially if you're a credible witness. They're like, that's a ton of money, but okay. But if you're not to, no shade to chiropractors, it's just a different level of income. If you're a chiropractor and you're like $15,000 a day, people on the jury are going to be like, when I go to the chiropractor, it's $50 or $100. Like, how many people is he? They're going to do the math and they're going to be like, no, I don't trust this person.
Yeah.
So money comes into all of it, but I don't think that the amount in and of itself is indicative of anything. It's just subjective to, or it's relative to their specialty.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense. And do you have do you have any expert horror stories of you work with an expert and you're like, I never want to work with anyone that does that again?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So one of them is, first of all, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but for the most part, attorneys, we just want the expert to shoot us straight. We're not hiring you to say a specific thing necessarily, right? I'm not hiring you to say absolutely this if it's not true. Let's say it's a slip and fall case. I just want you to give me the bad facts and I'll deal with them. But if you twist it and fudge it and essentially lie, we hired this expert and here's what he says, and we're going to go to trial and get smoked, or I'm going to find out during your deposition that you're full of it. You know what I mean? And so the horror stories that I've really had is just like either one of two things. One, either they just completely make something up and they make me look like I'm an idiot too because I'm fabricating something because I'm turning in their expert report, especially when I was a younger, inexperienced attorney. I'm just like, yeah, we hired this doctor and here's what he said. Or two, that here's what you should do as an expert. If you do review records, if you're a medical expert or you do a site inspection, especially if it's pre-litigation, but even in litigation sometimes, depending on the laws in your state, if your opinion is going to be bad for me, just call me. Don't, first of all, don't put it in writing. And second of all, don't bill me for all the time it's going to take you to put it in writing. Don't send me a $10,000 bill for this 20 or 30 page report that you read that just says that my case sucks. Just call me and go, hey, look, I could write this down. It's not going to go your way. My opinions aren't going to be any good for you. And then we just won't disclose them as an expert, but it really lends them a lot of credibility so that I know, okay, this person's a straight shooter. I can trust them. And I'm going to, next time, I'll send them some. And of course, we're going to pay for their time to do their inspection or review their records. Like, we're going to make sure that their time is covered and that they're paid. But don't bill me to write this really long report that I'm not going to be able to use. That, that you're never going to get hired again by anybody if you do that.
Yeah. It sounds like that happened to you. Someone billed you for a really long report.
Sure, it's happened.
Ouch. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any on the other side? Do you have any amazing stories of experts where you're like, this guy is the one I wish I could work with all the time? I know you can't really hire them on every single case.
I'm not thinking of necessarily anybody specific. There's a few that come to mind. That really the most important thing to me is accessibility. Just being able to text an expert and be like, hey, I just had a thought. Do you have a second? And they don't need to be available right then. They're busy professionals, but just, oh yeah, let me call you on my, if they're doing a surgery, hey, I'm doing surgery today, let me call you on my break or whatever. And just being, or just text me back. We don't even need to necessarily have a phone call. But if there's like a lot of third parties involved, oh, we've got to go through my assistant, like whatever. When it gets into the machinery of, oh, and that assistant doesn't handle this expert work, it's this other assistant, but I copied both of them on this email, and then you email them, that's what can get really annoying. So for me, it's like I said, being a straight shooter, just tell me, even if it's not good for my case, especially if it's not good for my case, bring it up. Don't gouge me. I'm happy to pay for your time at our agreed upon rate. If it's a case with 200 pages and records and you wrote a 5 page report, don't bill me for 20 hours, right? I'm not an insurance company. And a lot of times these experts, they'll get used to that with insurance companies, that insurance companies aren't really looking at their bills and they just get used to it. They go, hey, look, I send in this bill, it gets paid, no questions. For personal injury lawyers or for somebody who runs a plaintiff's practice, we're fronting the money for all of our clients' cases. And it's not just from a cash flow perspective of we don't want to be paying too much. We're also responsible for getting the recovery for our clients. In other words, let's say on a given case, let's say it's worth $200,000, right? The rule of thumb for case costs in general, not just experts, is that you don't want to exceed 10% of the ultimate value of the case on case costs. So if all we can really spend on the case is 20% or $20,000, I've got to be pretty strategic with whatever experts I'm going to hire. It's probably one expert on that kind of a case. I probably can't hire two experts because we're going to need to take some depositions and whatever else. And the problems you get into if you spend too much is that you're going to have to, like, that money is going to come from somewhere. So at the end of the day, you settle the case for $200,000. You've already paid the expert. You're going to have medical bills that need to be paid, whether that's health insurance liens or attorney liens. I think most personal injury firms are not going to end up taking more than their client, even if their fee percentages allow them. We certainly don't. So even though our fee is, let's say, a third or 40%, now we're going to have to reduce our fee because us taking 40% is going to be more than the client because we spent too much. So there's all a balance there. And I think a pro tip is just to shout that out to the expert ahead of time. Hey, I'm looking for a very narrow thing. Tell them you've got a budget, basically, because they also don't want to send you, their time is valuable, and they don't want to send you a bill for $15,000 for you to call them and go, "Ooh, I actually didn't need to review all that stuff, and sorry, my paralegal sent you all that."
Gotcha. And continuing on what you mentioned about the insurance companies, they can just pay out these big bills. Someone else mentioned previously that it seems like insurance companies, they're able to hire experts and have them say whatever they want them to say, so it goes their way. I was curious, how do you think those experts actually, because it sounds like they're lying, right? But how do you think they actually still have a business when it sounds like experts that get hired by insurance companies just lie all the time?
Yeah, that's painting with a really broad brush. It's probably unfair. Here's the way that I see it, and understanding that there are certainly people who lie and make stuff up. I think it's a matter of perspective, and certain experts just look at the world a different way. For example, I did insurance defense work for about 7 years, and we would consistently hire one expert at this firm that I was at. He's a spine surgery expert, very well credentialed, very qualified, and he is an amazing expert witness on the stand. I don't know how many cases he's reviewed over the years that just in the ones that I was involved in, but certainly hundreds. I never once saw him opine that a spine surgery was related to the car crash or to the slip and fall. Never, like not once, 0% of the time. He just doesn't believe it. Now, he could be a liar. It could just be that's the way that he sees the world and his experience of medicine. These things just aren't caused by that. I think it's also that it's a gray area. There's no hard and fast, okay, if they have these three findings, then it's definitely related to the car crash or the slip and fall. And there's nothing on MRI that is dated that, hey, this is from before or this is from after. The way I've heard Keith Mitnick explain it, who's a very successful trial attorney for Morgan and Morgan, is that the way he explains it to the jury is because you don't want to go out there and just say, hey, this other expert that they hired is a liar. He'll say that their competitive nature got the best of them. That, hey, this is an adversarial proceeding and they go up against these other experts all the time and they want to win. And look, maybe their competitive nature got the best of them on this one. But as far as them still having a business, yeah, if you're an insurance company and you can just guarantee that if you pay X amount of money for their time, that they're going to come in and give you the opinion that would help you out, that's that's you're going to do that every single time.
Yeah, gotcha. So it's not fair to say all insurance experts do that. It does happen, but who knows how well.
First of all, I only have the experience with the ones I've had experience with.
Yeah,
Um, and it cuts both ways, right? Cuts both ways, certainly. So no, I that's kind of where I stand on it.
gotcha. Outside of the technical expertise of the expert, maybe they're a neurosurgeon. What are other qualities, maybe other more soft skills that you look for when talking with an expert?
Yeah. So I mentioned one is just accessibility, being a good communicator, being able to text or hop on a phone call from time to time. Two is you don't want somebody who's super awkward. They're going to need to talk to a jury. Now, certain things, certain doctors, sometimes it can lend them almost credibility. They can't be just unlikable, but sometimes if people are a little too slick, a jury can be like, this guy's a little too charismatic. I believe anything that he says. You might want somebody that's a little more, for lack of a better term, a little more nerdy. I think there's honestly a big technology part of it, and it's just a generational thing. So this doesn't mean that they're a bad expert, but I can think of a particular expert that we use that like everything takes him a long time. He types out his reports or he dictates them, and they have to be transcribed by somebody else, but he doesn't have that person in his office. And by the way, dictating your reports and having them transcribed, everyone does that. So that's not that in and of itself is not a big deal. But just he doesn't text. It takes him a long time to get back. He doesn't quite really understand what's going on. That the industry has left him behind a little bit, and everything is just a little antiquated. So to sum that all up, I would just say that somebody who's easy to deal with, somebody who is just that you can talk to and go, hey man, here's what I'm thinking on this case. Is that supported by the medical records or is that supported by the evidence? And that they'll tell me their thoughts and they're not worried about, oh man, I've really got to get paid on this particular case and really got to ring this one up. That they're open to, hey, this is going to be a long-term relationship. We're going to use you on other cases. We really just need you to shoot us straight. So just being easy to deal with.
Yeah. And you mentioned something interesting. If someone is too slick or too charismatic, the jury can pick up on that. How, like, what would be described as too charismatic or too slick, where you're like, oh, this expert might not be the right fit?
Couple of things. One, when they come in, I've seen doctors come in dressed up like in their scrubs, like they just came from surgery. I don't like that because I think the jury is, give me a break. You know what I mean? Like, really, you just came from surgery. I think just a good suit, like nothing flashy. I've also seen doctors come in with purple plaid suit and a crazy tie, and they've got their $40,000 watch on that's gold. I think that's hard to pull off too, because they're just like, this guy's just a baller. Like he's just in this thing for the money. He's got a lifestyle to support. Also, I think it's really important both in deposition and especially at trial. And this is for your client, for any witness, but especially for expert witnesses, to the extent that they're able, they need to show opposing counsel the same respect that they show me. Otherwise, they're going to lose credibility. So if I get up and ask them questions and they smile and they're really nice and oh yeah, and then opposing counsel gets up and all of a sudden, oh, I don't understand your question. I don't know what you mean by that, and they just become obstinate and difficult. They really lose credibility with the jury. There's a way to disagree with opposing counsel and stick to your guns. And you don't need to have a crazy smile on your face and act like you like them because that's not going to read as genuine either. But you can't just all of a sudden code switch and you're like, I was this really nice guy when the one lawyer was up who was paying me, and now the other lawyer gets up and I'm very difficult and I don't understand anything. I need every question repeated. That's just not going to go well.
Oh wow, wow. So he would be trying to make the opposing side look bad, but he's just making himself look bad.
Totally.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, thank you so much for being here. I wish we would have all the time in the world so I could ask you more questions, but I want to stay true. I said it was only going to last 30 minutes, so just thank you so much for
Yeah,
being.
awesome. Thanks for your time, Ted.
All right, see you.
See ya.